Live.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Mill Park Business School's virtual auditorium for another meeting of minds. So today, our guests will talk to us about personal career development in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. And along with that, how psychometric tests can be effectively used in coaching, what the components are of psychometric tests, and how can I do well in a psychometric test. I am your host, Kobus Oosthuizen, the Dean of MBS, and joining us today is Dr. Jacques van Zyl, Director of Assessment World and Organizational Behavior Consultant, researcher, author, and lecturer, and Dani Kritzinger, industrial psychologist in private practice that provide consulting services on the implementation and managing of psychometric assessment projects, HR-related systems, and developing psychometric assessments. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your valuable time today to share your insights with us. And you are the main attraction. So without any further ado, I'm going to step aside and hand over the podium and the microphones to you. Thank you, Jacques and Dani.
Thank you, Kobus. Thanks, Dani, for joining. Excellent. Okay. So, Dani, if you could share slides with us, I can get the ball rolling.
Great, Jacques. You are on.
Right. And so I'll just use the word next, and you can just go to the next slide. So, ladies and gents, you know, Kobus says a lot of things, very interesting things. The one thing he said that we are not going to do is to tell you how to do good in a psychometric test. In fact, what we're rather going to focus on is, in this case, we're using an example of the ICD. And Dani will explain that ICD to you, but it's a career development index, which he has developed. And we've co-developed some of that, but he is the main author of that. And so we are going to share that with you because for us, the theme is about the fact that psychometrics is a scientific measurement tool. You know, often when people talk about psychometrics, they think it's a black box or you know, kind of like the future that you look into and kazam, something appears. It's really a mental mirror, literally, that you're looking into. But from a design and development perspective, we have to make sure that those instruments are scientific. So we use the American Psychology Association guidelines for test development. And I think to date, if I'm not mistaken, there's about 85 psychometric tests on our system, barring organizational surveys that we've also developed using the same guidelines, as well as a 360-degree job performance areas management index or measurement index, which looks at personality, 360 measurement in the organization, things like ethics, things like team functioning, culture functioning, and so on. So it's quite a vast amount of assessments that we have developed based, as I said, on the APA principle. So next, Dan. So I'm going to do the first 10 minutes, and I want to position for you just a little bit in terms of the current world. I was actually privileged last night to watch CNN and hear Joe Biden speak to the UN General Assembly, and listening to him speaking positively about things that they are doing from the US side and other countries in order to improve the world, you know, whether it's poverty alleviation, whether it is assisting developing nations with electricity. My word, that's going to be good for us, you know, education, less mortality rate, and so forth, economic growth, and so on. And I want to position this with you with, I think, about 5 slides, because we, with psychometric assessments, take a behavioral economic viewpoint. So we're saying, listen, we don't just develop tests for the sake of developing them because we enjoy it. Or yeah, we enjoy it, but it has to have utility value in the economy. So, for example, refer you to our public assessment site where you can do Dani's assessment, the ICD. After he's spoken about it, you can go do that at your leisure online and draw a report from that. So you'll also find assessment tools there like road behavior profiling or debt propensity index, and so on, individual integrity perception index. Because in our worldview at Assessment World, we say that everything that humans do has a cost to it, but it also has a return to it. So it's economic and it's behavioral. So with that in mind, if you then look at what at the World Economic Forum, top leaders, CEOs, religious leaders, leaders in state, environment, and so on, had to say in the survey that they annually do at the World Economic Forum, and there's the question, how do you feel about the outlook for the world? And you will see there that 61.2% are actually concerned, a very small percentage feel positive, and an even smaller percentage feel optimistic. So we seem to live in a world right now with all the upheaval, the COVIDs, the war in Ukraine, inflation, central banks increasing repo rates, and so forth. We seem to be in a VUCA world. Next one, Dan. And so probably most of you have heard the term VUCA, which is the acronym for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So I'm not going to go too deeply into that, but I do believe that we are currently in that phase. In fact, one of the slides I'm going to share with you and just talk a little bit about is what the WEF, the World Economic Forum, is now talking about, the reset, the great reset, whatever that is going to mean. In other words, getting away from the VUCA and the chaos and get a more structured world going. But right now we are, in my belief system, at a point where we are experiencing this VUCA. Look at South Africa. You talk VUCA around electricity non-provision often. And somebody said the other day, Eskom should change the name to Eskom sometimes because it's not a continuous flow. We also experience a high inflation rate, low growth rate, things I'm going to share with you. Next one. And so one of the positive things, because what I would like to add to VUCA is a O, which is opportunity. And again, World Economic Forum stuff, we know Industry 4.0. In fact, there are some people that think, or thinkers that are already entering into Industry 5.0. Yet still to hit South Africa maximally. But yes, if you just think about what COVID did to us all, if you think about the ICT connectivity, online work, the world of work is changing. Think about robotics, which, yes, is going to be a VUCA element in South Africa, given our high unemployment rate. But big data, all those things, our bank sector specifically, deeply into artificial intelligence already, and so on. So fourth industrial revolution, for me, as much as it's a disruptor, I also think it's going to bring opportunity, depending on, of course, how we, especially in South Africa, are able to accommodate and implement 4.0. Donnie? So I also pulled from the World Economic Forum's latest meeting and documentation, the jobs landscape, because we're talking career today. And just allow your eyes to just look at the top 10 emerging jobs globally that they have surveyed and that are top of the list when it comes to careers. And then you look at the top 10 declining, which is very interesting. I see there number 7, accountants and auditors, because to a large degree, a lot of that work will be done by artificial intelligence, will be automated at a very high level. So it is shifting. That's the point with this slide. And the question for you this afternoon at a very personal level is, how often do you look into the mental mirror when you think about your career and the curve that you are on and those inflection points that you often find where I'm getting to a point where I don't want to do this anymore. What does my future look like? Should I study further? Should I shift jobs? Should I completely shift career? And those are questions that we often do ask ourselves. Next one, Don. Okay, so my side is a little bit unclear, but if you pull the World Economic Forum, just go and Google their top 10 risks. And you will see there's at the top three, you'll have the climate issues, which we know is there. The whole issue around, especially going back to South Africa again, renewable energy. This morning, I listened to Donnie Root speaking about that, Harvey Root, economist, and he was saying, listen, renewable, yes, but it's not now the solution for the South African grid. What we need are more smaller power stations, private enterprise coming on board. But yes, we are going to have to at some point look at that. The one I want to focus on is the one second from the bottom, which is the debt crisis. So next one, Don. Because he was also mentioning and saying that the South African consumer is becoming poorer. Now, if you look at this particular graph on the vertical side left, it talks about $1 trillion in terms of debt. So we're already over 300 trillion US dollars in debt, and the global GDP is about 95. So it's approximately 350%, which does include state debt as well. And the World Economic Forum saying in this world of us, this VUCA world, this is a bubble that's going to burst, and we might need a new reset. Looking at South Africa, one of the things that Darby was mentioning was the fact that 30 million South Africans are living off government payments, which is not sustainable. So it creates unease in the South African situation. It brings it to us as a person and say, where am I standing in this? Where is my career going to in all of this? Next one. And so, yes, there's Klaus Schwab. And I find this fascinating. And this happened at this year's WEF in Davos, in Switzerland. And he says the pandemic represents a rare but narrow window of opportunity to reflect, reimagine, and reset our world. Now, of course, you know, the conspiracy theorists get a hold of this, and you can go on YouTube. There's a lot of conspiracies around this. What do they mean? Do they mean that we're all going to be poor again? Are we going to lose everything? Are financial systems going to collapse, etc.? But no, Klaus takes a much more positive outlook. And if I link that to what Joe Biden had to say yesterday, I feel a bit more positive about it. And again, coming back to South Africa, how does that affect me as an individual? So next one, Donnie, I just want to share some slides on South Africa very specifically. This is the newest quarter 22 from Stats South Africa that I actually pulled this morning. And as you can see, I think 7 of our sectors are in negative growth. And currently, next one, Donnie. And currently, you can see there's a retreat, as they call it, by 0.7%. Darby Root says 1.6, 1.5% growth GDP in South Africa is not sustainable for the kind of population we have and the growth that we are experiencing in population. We should rather more look towards the 3.5 to 4.8% bracket. And so again, it creates that question in my mind specifically, where do I fit into this? You know, can I benefit from partaking in this? Are there opportunities in this? And specifically, people looking at careers probably now should sit back and say, well, yes, it's VUCA, but let me add the O to it. There's possible opportunity here. Next one, Donnie. Investec, I pulled this morning. Their view of the next couple of years until 2027, looking at positive growth there at the top, GDP real, but not exceeding 5%. So again, slow growth, but again, I've got to look at myself and ask myself a question, where do I fit in with that, etc. So I think my last one, Donnie, before I hand over to you, is the next one. No, that's not the one. Sorry, but I'm going to talk about this. You can go and look it up. It talks about the unemployment rate in South Africa. The official unemployment rate, 34.5%, fourth line from the bottom. But if you add to that discouraged work seekers and those who are still not searching for work, we find an expanded unemployment rate of 45.5%. Now, why is this slide meaningful for me in the light of our conversation? Well, this is the point. I gather and I assume that most of you sitting on this call are employed. You have a career, you have a business, possibly. And so there is this view that says currently, just be grateful that you have a job and, cling to that job. I have a different view. I'm saying, yes, fine, from a security, financial security perspective, etc. But I always have to think futuristic. I always have to think around the corner, beyond the curve, when I think about my own life and the development of my own career. So it makes it difficult in South Africa, I know, because look at 30 million people living off state handouts. You look at these numbers that the Reserve Bank published in the first quarter, 45.5%. You're saying, whoa, this is anxiety-provoking stuff. I'm going to stay put and go nowhere. And as I said, for me, I'm always stretching, and taking the opportunity. You will look into your own mental mirror. Next one, Dani, which I then believe is the last one before I hand over to you. So Stephen Covey says this. He says, listen, you've got three circles you operate in, right? So the circle of concern that I've just shared with you, we've got no control over. We don't know what the big reset is. We can't control the economy. Got no idea. Existentially, we have to make peace with that. That's it. That's what we operate in. Then there's our circle of influence. Fine, to a degree, I can influence this. Now, I believe we should operate from the circle of control to the circle of influence, because in the circle of control is where I can make choices and changes. So I pulled a stat actually this morning, which says that at age 35, 45% of people have changed careers at least once. Okay, I don't know where you stand, but here's a point I want to make. And I'm saying measure what you value and then value what you measure. So if I look at my own life and I put up a mental mirror, Dani's going to put up for you in a moment, I'm saying, like, look at that honestly. So utilize a tool like this, which is a psychometric tool, which is the science of measuring mental capacities and processes, and then make decisions for my life going forward. It might not be tomorrow, it might not be a month from now, but I'm making myself aware that probably, possibly, I might have to take a different curve, given just the little background that I've given you and what you see of your world around you, me, and yourself. At that point, Dani, over to you.
Thanks, Jacques. Thank you so much. And just a comment on the sentence that you have there: measure what you value and then value what you measure. You said at the beginning, we're not going to tell them how to do good in or well in psychometric assessments, but I think the answer might be in that sentence there. If you measure something, measure it correctly, but then use that data to work from there. And that's exactly sort of what my definition of psychometric assessments are also about. It's assessments that provide information about a person. Okay, and it provides, we've got a whole range of different psychometric assessments. So you can assess for aptitudes, for abilities, for cognitive abilities, mental abilities, behavioral stuff, your personality. So attitudes, values, all those kind of things are what psychometric assessments are all about and what that actually measures. Now, we can also then implement this for various different reasons. If we look to the coaching and the personal development reason, these assessments are to identify personal strengths, to identify the development areas, and then also to assist the coach or the person self in structuring a development plan so that you have a basis to work from. Now, measure what you value and value what you measure. When completing psychometric assessments, try and be as honest as possible, because like Jacques said, it's a mental mirror you're looking into. And by trying to fool that, you're trying to fool yourself. And then the data and the results that you get out of that will not be workable or viable. So from my side, I think when you are confronted with psychometric assessments, take a deep breath, but listen to that inner voice of yours. I always tell my candidates, when you complete an assessment, there's a little voice. If you read a statement and they ask you to rate a statement on a scale of 1 to 7, how applicable that is to your life, that little voice will tell you, yes, this statement that I'm reading now is absolutely 100% me. Or it might be the other way. This is not me. I don't like it. It doesn't speak to me. So rather than indicate that in the assessment, because at the end of the day, it just enrich the data that you can use yourself to develop and grow. So that's just a little bit of psychometric assessment. Now, as Jacques said, I developed, well, he co-developed an assessment with me, the Career Development Index, the Individual Career Development Index. And before I get into that, I want to define what a job is versus what a career is, because that's two very different aspects. Now, if you look at a job, it's something that you do on a daily basis to earn money, to support you, to satisfy your basic needs, right? Now, if you look at that, then you can sort of say that jobs are short-term duties. And like Jacques said, 45% of people at the age of 35 have changed careers. It's a short-term aspect in your life. Okay. Whereas a career actually encapsulates all the jobs that you have had in the past. So it's not a set thing. It's a long-term investment that you do. And, you know, this can be defined in various ways. And for people, it will be different what they see as a career, right? Some people will look at it and they will define it as all the occupations or the positions they've occupied in a company, and they've climbed the corporate ladder. Other people say, you know, it's more about the achievements I had during my lifetime of work, not really giving much attention to the status behind what they've received, etc., but rather to what they've achieved personally. So that's just the main difference. So if we talk about careers, I want you guys to keep in mind that we refer to the long-term investment that you do, and you know how to grow in that, how to use the opportunities, see the opportunities, and develop yourself. Now, at this point, I want to talk about a form of career which is a protein career. And this type of career is defined that it's a career form that is less dependent on an organization to define success for a person. Okay, so protein careers are driven by individuals' self, not by organizations, not by managers. It's about the person's self that decides how they want to develop themselves and what to do. So individuals will take the ownership of their entire career, including the development and setting of goals and the outcomes thereof. Now, if you take that ownership, you know, the first step is to say, I want to take that ownership, but how you are going to do that? You can go and see psychologists, life coaches, etc., to assist you in that process. But the essence comes back to the fact that it is the individual self that make the decision of, you know, I want to grow in my career, I want to develop myself, etc., rather than being at an organization and a manager tells you, you absolutely have to do this. That's more like the older form of careers. So the protein career it's that inner circle that Dr. Van Zyl also talked about, where you take complete control of yourself and the career that you are in. Right. So before I go any further, the ICTY assessment was developed to assess a person in terms of career development, right? But how do you do that? So I did a lot of research, and I found that the best suitable application for that will be to focus on competencies, on personal competencies that are rated as important for people to be able to develop themselves or to take on challenges, etc. So the ICTI, it measures those specific competencies. And I just extracted the core, most important ones to talk about here today. There's a few others that when you do the assessment and you generate your report, you will see it's quite a vast, there's a vast number of dimensions that were assessed and that you can make use of when you want to consider career development. So in terms of this presentation, I only selected the most important personal competencies for you guys to consider. And I will talk a little bit about them, give a little bit of background as to what it is, etc. So the first one will be self-knowledge. Then we have adaptability, goal setting and planning, intrinsic motivation, self-confidence, and the last one I will get to is psychological success. So if we look at self-knowledge, it's that mental self-mirror that you can look into, and understanding yourself and your environment. You know, it's about understanding where you are physically, where you are mentally, where you are in emotionally. It's just to have an holistic understanding of who you are as a person. Now, this will also then assist you to identify personal strengths and development areas. Without self-knowledge, how are you going to identify that? And then the insight that you gain from this will enable you to establish and pursue relevant goals that you can set up for yourself. So that is why this is a very important construct. It's sort of the starting point where you are, to identify those concepts and then to plan ahead to get your desired outcomes. Now, the second one is adaptability. And I think as the VUCA environment, we all need to be much more adaptable. I think COVID also taught us a few lessons there. So adaptability is to accept and adapt to change. Now, we have to realize that it will occur on a continuous basis. Nothing will ever stay the same. So change is something that always happens. And with all the changes that happens, it does influence many aspects of our lives. If we can make an example, we are sitting here online in a virtual webinar, whereas let's say 5 to 10 years ago, this would have been like a session at a venue where we would have interacted on a face-to-face basis, right? Now we are here, we can extend our reaches and get to more people. Now, adaptability assists also in regulating your resources for dealing effectively with change. So by being adaptable, you are actually able to identify that change is about to happen, but then also to regulate what you can use around you so that you can adapt to what is going to change. Okay, the next one, goal setting. I don't know if you are all familiar with the SMART process of goal setting, but just to simplify this, when you have a goal, it says make the goal specific. Don't make it an open-ended goal that you want to reach. The second one is the M for measurable. How are you going to measure this goal that you've set? How do you know that you are progressing towards the end if you cannot measure that? Then the third one, achievable. We all have dreams, right? And we all have aspirations. But when you set a goal, make sure it is something that you can actually achieve. And we will get to psychological success at the end. The achievability is also a very important aspect because that also motivates you to keep on going. So make sure you can achieve your goal. The R is for relevant. It means that keep it relevant to your position, to where you are as a person. I mean, if you are not a sports person and your goal is to be a Protea cricket player within the next 3 months, but you've never ever picked up a cricket ball or cricket bat, that is not a very relevant sort of goal that you are aspiring to. So keep it relevant to your situation and to your personal place of where you are. And then the last one, the T, is time bound. And this is also an important one, is to challenge yourself to say by that time, by that month, this goal should be reached. Otherwise, if we tend to leave it as an open-ended goal to achieve, we sort of set back. You're not always motivated to achieve that, etc. So at the end of the day, your goal is not achieved because you haven't pushed yourself to a certain time. Right, intrinsic motivation. I'm going to explain this by also explaining the difference between intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. So if we look at extrinsic motivation, this is something that it motivates a person from outside, right? So it's not an inward-driven type of motivation. So if we look at some examples there, money, good grades, competing in sports for trophies, buy one, get one free, it's all motivating factors, but it's short-termed, right? At a certain point, money will not motivate you anymore to do specific tasks. So it has its place, but it is bound to be a short-term type of motivational factor to use. If we look at intrinsic motivation, on the other hand, it comes from within yourself, right? So motivation to attain your goals comes from within yourself. Now, if you look at examples there, it's autonomy and independence. Competing in sport for fun, not competing for you always have to win. It's to achieve the recognition. If you've done well at work and your manager comes up to you and they've recognized what you've done, that feeling that you get is that feeling of recognition is the intrinsic motivator. And then you also, get your personal fulfillment in what you are doing. Now, those factors are seen as a long-term motivator for people. So you will be able to carry on for longer when you focus on the intrinsic motivators rather than the extrinsic motivators. Right? Self-confidence. So self-confidence is the belief that you can successfully perform a particular task at hand. To believe in yourself, to perform the appropriate behaviors in a given situation, and trusting in one's own skills and abilities, and not to let criticism, failure have a negative impact on you. And that is sometimes very difficult. If you get criticism, people tend to doubt themselves, and you then see that in their performances as well. So self-confidence is a construct that, is very important, and you have to learn to work with criticism and see it more as development areas rather than taking it on personally and feeling the weight on your shoulders physically. So, right. Now, psychological success is something that I also want to talk to you guys about. So, this is usually determined by that feeling of satisfaction and pride and accomplishment when you've completed a task or when you've reached your goal, your objectives were reached. That feeling, that motivating feeling to take on different tasks, to continue on with other goals that have been set, that is classified as psychological success. Now, the factors of psychological success are the ones we just talked about: self-knowledge, adaptability, goal setting, and intrinsic motivation. Now, a sense of psychological success will likely be achieved when a person sets a challenging and meaningful goal, which requires the application of energy and focus, and then finally attaining that goal. And that is where the SMART principles also comes in handy. Make sure it is achievable, because the one downside of psychological success, or the thing that drags it down, is when goals are not achievable, when people have set out goals that were too far out of reach for them and they couldn't achieve them. And then the other thing is, it needs to be achievable, yes, but it also needs to be challenging. If a goal is too simple and too easy to achieve, people tend to lose interest in that. And then your psychological success, that strong feeling that you have, is not so evident when you've achieved that goal. So yes, it needs to be achievable, but at the other hand, it needs to challenge you. You need to focus a little bit, put in some energy so that you can feel that accomplishment was worth something for yourself. Right, so the individual career index, like Dr. Van Zyl said, it is on the Assessment World platform, so you guys are welcome to go there. There's the link that you can follow, and go test yourself. Go and generate the report, see all the dimensions that are reported on, identify your development areas and also your strengths. The important thing is to actually utilize your strengths in working with you. Utilize your strengths so that you can improve on your development areas. So please go to the link, complete the survey or the psychometric assessment, and see where your strengths and development areas are. So last slide here is just my contact details. Apologies, Dr. Van Zyl, for not putting yours on here, but yeah, you guys are welcome to make contact with us anytime you feel the need to.
Yeah, just stay for us on that slide. So, Donnie, you spoke about the components of the ICT. I made some comments and references there in the chat box as well. I think, Kobus, in terms of what the expectation was, is literally this, where we are saying, use a tool like this. If you are in a situation right now where you're thinking about career shifting, lane shifting, whatever it is you want to call it, and you need some self-knowledge, that is a great psychometric tool to use. The coaching part, now the report has been set up to almost be self-coaching. but sometimes people do need just to interact with someone for an hour or so. And that's where Donnie does quite a lot of excellent work with us. So please get a hold of him. Once you've done the report, you perhaps need a bit of, analyses from that, or somebody to explain things to you. You're welcome to get a hold of Donnie. So Donnie, thank you for your input. And thank you, Kobus, Milpark, Hanley, for having us. We are quite happy now to take questions.
Fantastic. Jacques, Donnie, thank you so much. I think this is, for me specifically, sounding selfish now, but a very valuable and stimulating topic around psychometrics and so forth. So thanks for taking us through. And Jacques, I think the thing that, I made a few notes here, but you mentioned the mental mirror, which I think it's a beautiful descriptor. Many people, and maybe people in the audience, within the context that you have sketched, whether it's politically, economically, environmentally, technologically, etc., and all these drivers of change are creating this nearly this free-floating anxiety, that you can't kind of peg it down. This is the thing that's making me anxious. But within this mixture of emotions or feelings, career and one's career progression is very prominent. And thank you very much to you guys who've provided tools that would assist one. And in my view, it doesn't matter where you are on your journey. And I know it's not storytelling time, but where I am in my life journey, I am confronted with, well, not confronted, but maybe looking at Donnie's view on taking control of one's own career, and that reflective time, but that mental mirror. So that's extremely valuable, and I think on that, because the issue of self-knowledge that you referred to, Donnie, my argument would be that it is liberating when you eventually get to the point of, my word, so this is who I am. Cannot be at peace with myself. I can live with myself. But, Donnie, I've also got a hypothesis that there are perhaps more people that think that they know, that they've got self-knowledge, but they perhaps do not. So, in your view, do you find that there are people that that initially believe they are something, and after immersing themselves in this psychometrics or in the mental mirror, the picture that comes out on the other end, that there is potentially gaps? Or what are your experiences on that?
Yes, Kobus, great question. And yeah, Dr. van Zyl also, he also has a fascinating story about when he was a student. One of his lectures taught him how to handle such processes. But maybe he can touch a little bit on that after my comment. So, the thing that people must remember about psychometric assessments is it's basically what you've put in, what the results will show. So, it is a mirror, and sometimes, as you say, people they think they know how they look in the mirror, and then once they get this, they are totally flabbergasted. It feels to them it is not who they are. So at the one spectrum, you get the people that are liberated. That's like, yeah, this is who I am. It's exactly me, and I'm so proud and whatever. And then at the other end, you get the people that still say, this is not me. and they will sort of go back and then challenge the test. And it's in such a case where counseling actually comes part, where the person that gives the feedback to that person must then say, okay, well, let's put this aside then. So tell me then who you are. Where do you actually differ from the results, so that we can sort of manage those gaps and get a clearer understanding of who the person is and how they think and how they see themselves. So that is an important aspect, is to always listen to people, because it is, the psychometric assessment they filled out, yes, but it was also done by them on their view of themselves. So sometimes you have to revert back to asking them personally then, all right, well, tell me then, where do you differ and who you are?
Awesome. Donnie, thank you very much. I'm going to refer to the...
Cobus, can I add to
that?
Sure,
please.
What Donnie's saying is very
Jacques.
true. Look, remember, a psychometric is not an exact blood test. Yeah, it's not going to give you that kind of score that you get when you go and test blood for cholesterol or whatever. Yeah, so it's you engage with the tool, and what Donnie is saying is what you put in is what you get out. So we believe, for example, at Assessment World, and you'll see our reports as well. I kind of like pride myself in saying it's blue collar reports. I grew up in a blue collar environment with my ooms and my dad and so on, and we fixed cars and things. We wired houses with electricity, and so we believe you get that report. Like take the ICD, you'll see it's a blue collar report. There's no fancy pictures and sexy graphs and stuff. It tells you what you put in. You take a pen, you scratch out what you don't agree with, but then ask yourself the question: why did that result come up? Then did I perhaps do a socially desirable response? So it's a difficult question. It says, are you happy in your current job? And you defend and you say, oh, yeah, you're kind of, but in the meantime you hate this thing. So what we say is take a pen, scratch out, make notes. So the story he's referring to is exactly that. I had this prof in my master's year who said, listen, if somebody doesn't agree with the report, rip the report up and then have a conversation with them. So what is it then that you want, and who is it then that you are? Thank you for that answer, Donnie. Cobus?
Thank you, colleagues. Absolutely. I just want to refer to a question by Jane. What processes or mechanisms can people put in place to improve their self-confidence in relation to criticism, to use the feedback constructively?
Yeah, great question. I think from my point of view, and it is to sort of, when you get criticism, let's say you are in a work environment and you get criticized by a manager. Now, this is very difficult to actually implement, but try and understand where that person is coming from. Try and understand their view on the situation, what their expectations were versus what the product was that maybe come out. So try and understand what they are trying to tell you, right? Because when you understand that, when you understand where someone is coming from, what you have to sort of read between the lines what they are saying. Then it's easier for you to take that and say, okay, well, yeah, maybe I can do this differently. But if you try and fight fire with fire in this case, then obviously the criticism will drag you down, because then you don't understand it. You don't understand the person's comment or what they actually are trying to tell you, and you see it as criticism. It's a burden on your back and it weighs you down. Whereas if you try and understand it, it's a little bit lighter, because you can sort of see the holistic view of the situation.
You know what? I will agree with you. I will agree with you if the person who, and Jane, if you use the word criticism, that's a very strong linguistic, no? So you must also think about why do you interpret it as criticism? It could be in your own self-esteem, self-confidence, that every time somebody says to me, listen, can we do it this way? Or perhaps we should have done it that way. I see it as criticism. So I think first port of call, and I know, Donnie, you're talking about the position that the person is coming from. I would also suggest, add to that, reflect about myself. Why is it that I'm experiencing this so intensely, so emotionally? And then come to what you're saying, integrate that. But that depends on the strength of your self-esteem in general. I've seen people coming into organizations at very senior level, but because of various factors, they're not okay. They're just simply not okay. And so even if you ask them, would you mind just moving the glass there? They respond with, why do you always tell me what to do? Do I do nothing right? And so you also have to think about, your own self-esteem. Why are you so sensitive? Now, I'm not saying you're sensitive, Jane. I mean, that was a great question, but strong self-esteem starts with strong self-talk. And so, Donnie, to your point, if it's a bully telling me, listen, do this, this is never right, and nothing's never right, I will confront that bully. Because why should I be the victim of that bully? Because they just want to gain control and power over my life. So again, to your point, the point that the person is coming from, but they're not always coming from a good ethical point. So you're quite right in saying that. But I think we have to be realistic. Some people are pigs, full stop, in the organization.
Yeah.
And I have to see it for it. Yeah, exactly. And I have to, for my own self-esteem's sake, push back. Now, I put in there in the chat box, hooking the adult. Do yourself a favor, ladies and gents, go and read up on the web on transactional analysis. Because everybody's freezing. I hope you can still hear me. Confirm that you can still hear me. I'm frozen on my own screen. Good Lord. Is there a thing that you want to stop me and you just freeze me? Yeah, so you know what? Go and read on transactional analysis specific. There's a little book written, man, by a guy by the surname of Harris. And the book is I'm Okay, You're Okay. You might not find it anymore, but the British Society or Association for Transactional Analysis, it is very powerful also to think about yourself. Why is it that the child gets hooked in? Why do I get so emotional? Why do I get so defensive? And this is all part of developing self-knowledge. Man, I wish I had more time to get back the answer, but I think in general, those would be my thoughts.
Wonderful, Jacques. Thank you very much, Donnie. Thanks. Another question, and it comes from Larissa. What are the ways in which a person's extrinsic motivation can be changed into intrinsic? And can it be done at all?
Shall I take that, Donnie? He's talking, but he's muted.
Yeah.
Still muted. Just talk to us a bit. Now you're muted. Okay. While he's unmuting himself, Larissa, can I tell you what? For me, there's not a dichotomous issue. It's not an either or. You asked me this evening, does money motivate you? I will tell you, money absolutely motivates me. Absolutely. You asked me this evening, does psychological success motivate you? I will say to you, absolutely it motivates me. So my answer to that question would be is no. I think identify whatever it is that motivates you, whether it's intrinsic or extrinsic, that's fine. I find this whole debate on the either or of intrinsic versus extrinsic, and I've given you a reference to Daniel Pink. Go check him on YouTube, on his website. He's very much on this thing of mastery, purpose, and so on, and autonomy, which is highly intrinsic, and he quotes research from London School of Economics that for paid jobs don't motivate as much as these. I'm saying, come to South Africa, Daniel, and come and live in South Africa for a while, and then you'll also find out that money is very important, and money is a great motivator. So I believe, Larissa, in short, don't change that unless you are unhappy with the fact that it's only extrinsic things that motivate you. But that takes a lot of self-development and a lot of self-reflection, and to eventually pin down what are those intrinsic things, and then to start pursuing them and measuring them. which I think is very important. Donnie, did you want to add?
Okay, so first, can you guys hear me now?
Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Okay, great.
We're highly motivated by hearing your voice.
Fantastic. So another extrinsic motivator there. So Jacques, yeah, no, what you say is absolutely true. I mean, let's take money for instance. It's in literature, it's seen as this extrinsic motivator, but in real life, I mean, you need money to go and buy a bread, eh? So don't tell me money don't motivate you. It absolutely does. The difference is just, to what extent can it motivate you? If you ask the same question to Elon Musk now, does money motivate you? Are you going to cry if you lose a couple million? He's not even going to feel it, man. He will not care about that. And that is the thing about the extrinsic motivator factors. So it is important. If it motivates you, use that. If it motivates you to achieve your goal, use it. The intrinsic one, motivators are just, the feelings that you achieve when goals are being achieved, etc. So the theory is it's a longer term type of motivator for you, and it keeps you going. But absolutely right. Go with what you find works for you in that situation. The reason it's part of the assessment or the results at the end of the day is just to give the person that reflective mirror of where are you, so that they know what they can use if they are going to start this process of developing their career. It's not to say, you have to change it now. If you want to be successful, you have to change. It's not that case. It's more a fact of understanding yourself, understanding who you are, and what helps you to get where you want to be.
Yeah, and I like your
Fantastic.
psychological success, Donnie. I think that embraces everything, and to Larissa's point as well. I think if we and I see Jane wrote there in the chat, thinking about one's thinking is important. It's called metacognition, and to metacognitize about psychological success and all the elements of that, and then pursue those intrinsic motivational experiences, the feelings that you're talking about, I think it's an achievable objective. But just finally, I think this whole thing of making people feel guilty because money makes them happy and money motivates them, and it's wrong. No, it's not wrong. It's absolutely right. Can I say amen to that, Kobus?
There we go, Jacques. There we go. Awesome. Colleagues, it's a fascinating discussion, and it would have been wonderful to actually sit around a fire and really talk into the night and philosophize over these things. But time's catching up with us. We really, again, want to express our sincere appreciation to yourselves for putting aside the time. And, with the myriad of mechanisms, tools, and whatever else available out there, I think you've also provided us with a starting point, a place. So, people might ask, so, okay, so where do I start? And the suggestion, the takeaway is, okay, guys, go and start with I just need to pronounce it. How do you pronounce it, Jacques?
IGD, man. It's the IGD.
IGD.
The ICDI, yeah. IGD, yes.
ICDI, yeah. With the IGD. Make that the point of departure, the launch pad, so to speak. I know I've subjected myself to every conceivable psychometric test out there in the process to kind of understand myself, because other people didn't, and I didn't understand myself either. But it it really helps. So that's a good point. And colleagues, please, this is recorded, so you can watch it again if you don't have Donnie's and Jacques' contact details, and the links are all there in the chat box. I don't see any other questions, and so maybe in closing to both Jacques, and to Dani. A last few closing words from your side, gentlemen.
No, thank you so much for the opportunity. I really enjoyed it, and yeah, looking forward to everyone completing the assessment, and just start your process of developing yourself, taking control of your inner circle, and then adapt to whatever life throws at you.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you, Cobus and team. We always appreciate having these conversations, and I enjoyed this evening, especially, and thank you for all the questions and also the comments in the chat box. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, colleagues, that's a wrap, as they say. It was fantastic having you all together here. Thanks to everybody who asked questions and who posted on in the chat box, and of course our special guests this afternoon. Wishing each and everyone a spectacular evening. May it be in light wherever you are. I know the okay, let me rather just stop there. So keep your feet on the ground, reach for the stars, and remember, tomorrow is beautiful. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.